Hello, my name is Kian Lauser, and I am the Technical Assistance Manager for the State Performance Plan Technical Assistance Project, also known as SPP-TAP. SPP-TAP is funded by the California Department of Education through a contract with the Napa County Office of Education. This is one of our 4 recordings introducing you to significant disproportionality. This series of recordings is foundational to understanding what significant disproportionality is, why your LEA has been identified as significantly disproportionate, and why this work is important. You can access the rest of the recordings from the Significant Disproportionality page on our SPP-TAP.org website. This recording is about identification methodology for determining that local educational agencies are significantly disproportionate. In just a moment, you'll be hearing from the Assistant Director of Special Education at the California Department of Education, Shiyloh Duncan-Becerril.
Calculation requirements. The CDE calculates the risk ratio for every LEA using the following criteria. If the analysis group has a numerator less than 10, minimum cell size, and a denominator less than 20, minimum in size, then no calculation is done. If the LEA comparison group has a numerator less than 10 or a denominator less than 20, then the alternate risk ratio is used instead of the risk ratio. If the state comparison group has a numerator less than 10 and a denominator less than 20, then no calculation is done. So, what is the risk ratio? The California Department of Education, CDE, is required to calculate the risk ratio for each LEA. A risk ratio is a numerical comparison between the risk of a specific outcome for one racial or ethnic group in an LEA, the analysis group, and the risk of the same outcome for all other students in the LEA, also known as the comparison group. Here is an example of the risk ratio. For this example, we will be focusing on the students in the LEA who are African American and have an emotional disturbance, and the students in the LEA who have an emotional disturbance who are not African American. To calculate the African American risk, we take the number of students with disabilities who are African American, 27, divided by the total enrollment of students who are African American, 325, times 100, which equates to 8.308. Because the non-African American counts are more than 10 and 20, the LEA counts are used. To calculate the non-African American risk, we take the number of non-African American students with disabilities, 93, divided by all students who are not African American, 5,023, times 100, which equates to 1.851. The risk ratio for this LEA is 8.308 divided by 1.851, which equates to 4.49. What is the alternate risk ratio? In cases where either the numerator or the denominator of the LEA comparison group fails to meet the minimum in size or cell size, the alternate risk ratio is used. This calculation uses statewide numbers. Here's an example of the alternate risk ratio. For this example, we'll be focusing on students in the LEA who are white and have an emotional disturbance, and students in the LEA who are not white. We will also be looking at students in the state who have an emotional disturbance who are white, and all the students in the state. To calculate the white risk, we take the number of students who have an emotional disturbance who are white, 21, divided by the number of students who are white in the LEA, 1,434, times 100, which equates to 1.465. Since the non-white students are less than 10, comparison group is now the state. To calculate the state risk, we look at the total number of students who have an emotional disturbance who are not white, 15,802, divided by the total number of students who are not white in the state, 4,769,223, times 100, which equates to 0.331. The risk ratio is 1.465 divided by 0.331, which equates to 4.42. So what are the sources of data that we use for the calculation of significant disproportionality? Data for indicators 9 and 10 are taken from census data extracted from the California Longitudinal Pupil Achievement Data System, CalPADS, for students 3 to 21. Data for placement is taken from CalPADS Census Day extracts for students 6 to 21. Data for discipline is pulled from two sources for students aged 3 to 21. The total special education enrollment is taken from the prior end-of-year CalPADS. Discipline data is from the CalPADS end-of-year discipline files. Federal regulation flexibility. The U.S. Department of Education provided states flexibility. Federal significant disproportionality regulations give states some flexibility to define significant disproportionality. They provided flexibility to determine the risk ratio threshold. California uses the threshold of 3.0. They provided flexibility to determine the number of years that would be used for significant disproportionality. California uses 3 consecutive years. And the federal government provided reasonable progress flexibility. The current ratio is less than 4, and improvement is seen over all 3 years. Then the LEA can be excused for reasonable progress. If you have questions regarding your data that you receive, please contact Stephen Rogers, Educational Programs Consultant at SROGERS@cde.ca.gov.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to the Assistant Director of Special Education at the California Department of Education, Shiyloh Duncan-Becerril. SPP-TAP will be providing a series of required virtual and in-person meetings for local educational agencies newly identified as significantly disproportionate. These meetings will assist LEAs in understanding how significant disproportionality is addressed in the Compliance and Improvement Monitoring System, also known as SIM. The virtual meetings are required for all LEAs to attend. As you can see, on April 2nd, we will have the intro for SIM for SIGDIS virtual meeting. SPP-TAP will also be holding in-person meetings to provide information around the Step 1 SIM for SIGDIS process. And these will be provided in 6 locations throughout the state of California. On April 11th, we will be in Red Bluff, April 16th in Concord, April 18th in Sunnyvale, April 19th in Fresno, April 24th in Pasadena, and April 25th, Orange County. I want to point out that LEAs are only required to attend one of these in-person trainings. On June 11th, we will also be hosting a Step 2 virtual workshop. Information about who from your LEA should attend these meetings is located on our SPP-TAP.org website. As a reminder, please view the remaining recordings in the Introduction to Significant Disproportionality series. Also on our SPP-TAP.org website, Significant Disproportionality webpage, there are a number of important events for you to attend. Please make sure to get those saved on your calendar. And as mentioned, please contact us if you have any questions.